Hey everyone, it's Dr. K. So we put a lot of wear and tear on our bodies with our repeated movement patterns, our habits, and that applies to whether or not we're training in the gym or we're doing our daily activities. So it's absolutely critical that we start to prioritize good spinal mechanics, not just when we're training or performing, but when we're doing functional activities in our daily lives, in our real lives, like picking up the groceries or playing with our kids or carrying our dog, taking them outside, those kinds of things. We need good spinal positioning so that we have good efficient movement patterns. So one of the things that we cue over and over again with our clients at Rebel Mobility and Fitness is we need to realize we're not just doing these drills, we're not practicing these for the sake of practicing them to make them perfect. We're also trying to make the connection that perfect practice makes things permanent. So with that said, we need to be able to organize our spine, from a bad position to a neutral position. That way we can create bracing in a neutral position and, breathe into it. That way, we can get in a good foundation in place before we start to pull or push or press or, flex or drive off of that position, okay? That's going to help you reduce stress on the body and improve your performance overall. So this ties into another cue that we use in clinic, which is neutral, brace, breathe. And I can do other posts on it down the road, but basically what we need to do is we need to get our spine into a neutral position. So if we're in a bad flex position or overly extended or maybe rotated, we need to get neutral so that we can be capable of bracing and breathing into it. And then that way, we have good performance overall. And there's some different bracing and breathing techniques that I'm going to post about. But the main thing today is if you have poor spinal mechanics, and you have good bracing strategies, that bracing strategy is going to be compromised to begin with. So we need to start thinking from the very start about our neutral position. So a brace neutral position for the spine is basically our optimal base position. And this allows a lot of good movement variability by also having a stable platform to perform off of, to produce force, to transmit force from one side of the body to the other. And this allows us to do our day-to-day activities in a really good, safe, efficient way. Less wear and tear on the body. So if you think about the 3 zones that I previously posted about, the core is essentially the stable pillar of the platform that your shoulders and your hips and your pelvis can transmit force from and transmit force through. So if your spine is in a bad position, then that creates instability in the hip, the knee, the ankle, or instability in the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, the hand. And that leads to wear and tear, that leads to increased likelihood of an injury, that leads to reduced mobility, so less range of motion. So what we need to do is we need to think and focus about getting into a nice neutral position. That way, if you practice this over and over again, you're going to be able to master it on your own. You can apply this checklist to whatever movements or positions you're getting ready to do, either in the gym or in your real world. And then that way it becomes a more natural kind of pattern for you. It becomes ingrained up here. You'll know when you're out of position. You're going to know when you're not hitting all the points on your checklist. So in order to have a good result over time and time again, I want you to really think about perfect practice makes things permanent. So it all starts with the feet. And I'm going to do another post on, something interesting called the listening foot. But for right now, what we're making sure is that our feet are balanced and we have a nice balance of our weight on our midfoot position. And basically our feet are underneath our hips and they're parallel to each other. So one foot isn't turned out compared to the other, they're parallel to each other. We're going to start by screwing our feet into the floor. So I'm not literally turning my foot out, I'm creating enough tension in my foot to where I feel the inside of my foot start to lift off the ground just a little bit, tension in my legs start to increase. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to balance out my pelvis by squeezing my glutes, squeezing my butt. So if I'm an anterior tilt or posterior tilt, I'm going to squeeze and activate my glutes to balance my pelvis into a more neutral position. Now that you can screw your feet into the floor and engage your glutes at the same time. You don't have to get 100% glute engagement, just enough to balance out your pelvis. That way, your pelvis is creating, again, a platform for that stable core that we talked about to be as optimal as it can be whenever it's braced. So now we're going to get the rib cage in line with the pelvis and the core by also using our diaphragm to take a deep breath in through our nose. So you're going to breathe in through your nose, really get some good expansion of your chest wall, getting good mobility of your rib cage, and basically at the same time that you do that, you're going to externally rotate your arms and shoulders back, and that's going to also create a following of your neck into a good position. So what we're doing is we're basically getting the ears to line up with the shoulders, to line up with the hip, the knee, and the ankle, all in line, all stacked together while you inhale. So, and then as you exhale, you're actually going to create stiffness around the trunk. And what you're doing is you're creating an internalized pressure within the core. And I want you to be able to get comfortable breathing into that. Basically, as we exhale, our arms are going to come out by our sides, palms are going to be pointing forward. We're keeping our shoulders externally rotated, and basically you can just kind of let your arms drop down by the side. Now, once you're here, you can start to interact with the world in a really great way, however you need to. But the reality is, we're just trying to get in a good base position before we start to move. Now, things that go on with the breathing are really interesting because, we see a lot of internal activation of the abdominal wall, the obliques, the transverse abdominis. Those all help support the spine and maintain that stability while you're exercising. So start thinking about your positioning and kind of go through that checklist of finding neutral spine before you start to move, squat, lift, push, pull. It's going to reduce stress on your body. It's going to optimize your performance. And remember, perfect practice makes things permanent. So I'm celebrating your success already. Stay strong, inspire others.